Okay, everybody, welcome to the Basu and Gaudin Notebook on this Monday, January the 6th, 2025. I am Marc-Antoine Gaudin with Arpin Basu. Arpin, sometimes I'm happy that I stay home. I'm happy to spend the holidays with my family. It's all great. But I wish I was on that road trip and experienced something that was truly remarkable from the Montreal Canadiens. It seems that we just witnessed something that was quite out of the ordinary. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, no, you're not wrong at all. Honestly, like this is the trip that dooms this team year after year after year, and even when the team is good and competitive, like this trip is often a step back for them. This team is not good and competitive, but suddenly became that way over the course of their most difficult stretch of the season. So, it's interesting you frame it that way. I was thinking about this just today, actually. I'm like, wow, this is like a very different team that I'm going to start covering again today, from the one that I last covered like in person. I mean, it's I always don't do this trip. But yeah, you're right. Like it would have been interesting to be on it because this team transformed over the course of this trip, and it's rare that you're with a team in any situation, but where it's just like you're there for that corner turning moment, and it's hard not to think this was that for the Canadians.
Can we already say it though?
Well, I'm saying it could be that, and
yeah.
Had we covered the trip, and it's not like we ignored the team while they were gone. It's just like it's I was looking at. I wrote a couple of times. I felt compelled to write a couple of times during the trip because it felt that way. It felt like this could be a corner turning moment, and it's again when Marty says it and when the players say it, and I agree with it. It's one thing to win the games. It's another thing to win the games the way they won them. And to me, it's tremendous stick-to-itiveness, which I find is a wonderful hockey term. It's just a great hockey-ism. But the stick-to-itiveness of this team is what's impressed me most. And in Colorado, that game didn't start out very well. They were on their heels a little bit. They weren't really creating much in the offensive zone, but they stuck to it. They had stick-to-itiveness, and they continued playing the way that they are now confident will lead them to wins, and really kind of limited Colorado's chances pretty well. They were giving up some shots, but they didn't really give up all that much. Jakub Dobich, who we're going to talk about, but he was great. I think even better than he was in Florida, personally. But eventually that game turned. And then it was the Canadiens that were taking it to Colorado, and the Canadiens took control of that game because they stuck to it. They stuck to what they believed in. And so to me, this trip gave them something to believe in, basically.
There was something rope-a-dope about this win in Colorado where they let the Avalanche just empty their charger, and at some point they had to reload, and the Canadiens took advantage. But at the beginning, I mean, the Avs were all over the Canadiens. I felt as though the first two periods, Nathan MacKinnon's line was always in the Canadian zone, nonstop. And I mean, they missed they missed the net a lot. I saw in on our chat some listeners and subscribers saying, well, have we seen a team miss the net more than the Canadiens? Well, the Avs yesterday were pretty much like this. I mean, not yesterday, but on Saturday. So but eventually, I mean, yeah, there was Dobesh, there was Caden Gooley blocking 9 shots. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a career high for him. He blocked 8 shots against Ottawa at some point, but nine block shots, that was a career high for him. So yeah, the stick to itiveness of their game showed different faces also throughout that trip, because they didn't always stick to it in the same way. In this case, it's just it's almost like a team that's playing at home, and they know that they need to weather the storm, and at some point things will calm down. But we've seen this scenario, and the Canadians have been on the end of it on numerous occasions over the years. It's that the Avalanche played well, but at some point they must have said, I didn't listen to their comments after the game, but they must have said, we had our chances, and it was up to us to go ahead and take them, and we had our opportunities and we let it slip away. It's a common scenario in hockey, and at some point you reach a point in the game, in this case, late second period, you could start feeling it, that the Colorado has not seized their opportunity, and the tide is starting to turn, and the Canadians were patient. That's why I'm saying rope-a-dope before, because they got hit on a few times. They got a lot of punches, but they started to retaliate, and eventually they prevailed.
Yeah, and I mean, to go back to Caden Gooley, he played, I think it was 12-35 head to head with Nathan MacKinnon in that game at 5-on-5.
Yeah.
Colorado controlled those minutes quite decisively. 9-1 shots on goal, 18-8 shot attempts, but 0-0 goals. 88% expected goals for the Avalanche in those minutes, but no goals. And that call on Gooley towards the end of regulation on MacKinnon was just ridiculous. I mean, I hate bringing up.
Did you see his face? What?
Well, yeah. I don't. Did you see Marty behind the bench? Did you? I mean, it was like he would not stop. There were F-bombs coming from both sides of the ice there, and deservedly so. That was a ridiculous. I mean, honestly, that was a ridiculous call. Like, we see that hit 20 to 30 times a game. Like, honestly, where a guy does take his hand off his stick to finish a guy, but to call that holding at that juncture of a tie game was beyond ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's an instance of Marty saying, this, sometimes that's a penalty and sometimes that isn't. Like, that is almost never a penalty. But anyhow, that's not the point. The point being that Gooley was given an assignment. Matheson as well. Matheson was on the ice for 11 minutes. And the one thing, well, I'll just finish this point, is that another example, we were recently talking about Gooley and just how you sometimes take him for granted, but every time he's given these assignments, he's done it against Connor McDavid. He's done it against all the best players in the league. It's a special thing to have a guy like that who just loves that challenge of facing the best and has the feet and the physicality and the smarts to do it. But what I found kind of most compelling about the weekend, basically since our last episode, is that the Canadians were thrown a couple of injury curveballs. Patrick Laine gets sick, not available. David Savard, upper body, not available. Struble has to come in. I thought he did actually he only played 10 minutes in Colorado, but I thought he did pretty well. On the second game, I don't know. But
yeah,
he didn't play
in Chicago. In Chicago, it was a tough start. I mean, drawing with that penalty on his first shift. I mean, it was. Yeah, he played better in Colorado. No doubt. Played better in
Colorado. Obviously, Pezzetta comes in, doesn't play a whole lot, but still, what I thought was leading or was the driving force behind the Canadians' success was, remember, we had an episode, everything was falling into place. Everything was running smoothly. All the lines were going well. The D pairs were going well. And all of a sudden they had to mix it up. And, the D pairs in Colorado were just this constant evolving, it was a lava lamp almost. It just kind of changed. It just kind of changed every shift. So it didn't impact them necessarily the way I thought it might. Like the game in Chicago was what it was. They hit them with 40 shots on goal. I mean, honestly, like you run into a hot goalie, it happens. It's not. They played a pretty good game. You can't really
Yeah.
say that they went in there and didn't play well. And then the Colorado game, despite having those two curveballs thrown at you, they stuck to it. And I found this interesting, though. What did you think of the decision to keep Doc on the second unit with Laine gone and to have Armia there?
I think that yeah.
Well,
I mean,
it just drew me back to where Marty talked about the main purpose of taking Doc off the top unit and to put him on the second unit was to make sure that he's kind of the main conduit on the second unit. And he really doubled down on that, I thought, by not putting him back on the first unit.